All right, Shalom Akim. All praises goes to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai Bashem Rakat Kodash. Double honors goes to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. And much love and peace and blessings goes to all you hopeful elect brothers that are teaching the word of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. So basically, it's going to be a lesson, and I'm gonna entitle it "Proof." The Native Americans are Israelites. They were on slave ships, all right? Because here, this is a recent update where Mexican archaeologists, it says from the headline, Mexican archaeologists identified the first Mayan slave ship to have ever been discovered. And see, the thing about it is, you have a lot of scoffers that will come about and say that Hispanics, so-called Hispanics, really more accurate is just the natives of the Western Hemisphere, or the North and Central and South America. They will say that those aren't Israelites. Well, really they are, and everything is happening through the Spirit. That's why Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, the Most High, was dealing with High Priest Ariyah to actually identify the 10 tribes and actually have the 12 tribes chart, which is a spiritual chart that identifies who each tribe of the nation of Israel are. Now, are there scattered Issacharites in different parts of the world? Yes. Are there scattered Judites in different parts of the world? Yes. But the whole thing about it is identifying the bulk of, who the Israelites are today. And it started from there, because from that platform, how this truth has expanded all across the earth. And a lot of our people are waking up to their identity as being Hebrew Israelites. And a lot of contemporary sources that were here in the 1800s, 1700s, those historians that encountered Native American Indians, they were saying things like they had names like Abraham and Isaac. They spoke versions of Hebrew. Okay, they had customs went back to what they call the Jews, which are really just the Israelites in general. And why was all these facts? Why were all these facts being stated? Because they are Israelites. They didn't have these type of customs and traditions for no reason. Hispanics and Native Americans aren't on the bottom right next to the so-called Negro for no reason. It's because we all have sinned before our God Yahweh and have been put in this precarious situation, this bad estate, if you will, to put it simply. So I'm gonna read more of this article. This proves that the Native American Indians, and this is just focusing on the Mayans, but the rest of the Native Indian tribes, they encountered all types of, they have been through all types of curses, which you can read in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. They've been through that. It says archaeologists in Mexico have confirmed that a shipwreck discovered off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula once captured Mayans who were sold into slavery. That says it all, because it was a ship that they were put on for them to go into captivity. And let's read that in the scriptures, right? This is Deuteronomy chapter 28. Salaki, let me pause real quick. Blow my nose. Okay, Salaki. Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt. The Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. And why does it mention Egypt? The reason why it says Egypt, because Egypt is not talking about the geological location of Egypt, but it's really represented into being in slavery, right? Because it says, Exodus 13:3, and Moses said unto the people, remember this day in which ye came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. And that's why it says out of the house of bondage, meaning the house of captivity. And that word for bondage is ibad, which represents a slave. Meaning what? It tells you when our people were in Egypt, they were doing all types of hard labor. They were actually building the treasured cities. That was one of their main occupations. They were building up the pyramids and different buildings out there in Egypt, and they were doing it, under hard labor. So it says again, Deuteronomy 28:68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Okay, and that's basically a seafaring vessel. That's what a ship is. Even in the Hebrew, that's what that word means. And this is exactly what these Mayans had experienced. All right, and this was a future prophecy of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai telling his people back then, the Israelites back then, during the time of Moses, that this would happen to them if they broke his commandments. And lo and behold, you see these things come to pass to who the Israelites are in this day and age, from the time, the transatlantic slave trade to even this time. And this, I believe, was in the 1800s. So I'm going to read a bit more. It says, it is the first Mayan slave ship ever discovered, according to Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH, which that's spiritual in itself, because INAH is a Hebrew word, with INAH, which made the announcement on Tuesday. The paddle wheel steamboat, known as La Union, was discovered by archaeologists in the Gulf of Mexico, 2 nautical miles from Sicily in 2017, but it took 3 years of research to confirm that it was a Mayan slave ship. La Union illegally captured and transported about 25 to 30 Mayans monthly to Cuba, where they were forced to work in sugarcane fields between 1855 and 1861. So that's what that's around 300 for each year, and that's upward in the thousands, man, what that got put into captivity. It says where they were forced to work in sugarcane fields between 1855 and 1861. And isn't that reminiscent of the slavery the so-called Negro experienced in America, forced to pick cotton and harvest rice, harvest tobacco in Virginia? They were doing the same stuff to these Mayans. And not only the Mayans, the rest of the native tribes that were here when the so-called white man encountered them when he came over here. All right, those so-called Spanish devils and the Portuguese devils. It says each slave was sold to middlemen for 25 pesos and resold them in Havana for as much as 160 pesos for men and 120 pesos for women. INAH archaeologist Helena Barbara Manicki said in a press release, the ship sunk on September 19th, 1861, while en route to Cuba, proving that slavery continued despite having been abolished in Mexico in 1829, and a decree issued banning the forced extraction of Mayan people that same year. Okay. So, I mean, Esau could be lowballing these numbers as far as it being, 30 Mayans aboard the ship to be sold into slavery. It could have been more than that. So that's a significant amount of history there. Significant amount of people that had to face captivity at the hands of these devils, man. That wasn't for nothing. So let's go back to Deuteronomy 28 and 68. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So those bondmen and bondwomen represent slaves. Like those Mayans, they were picking sugarcane for these Edomites out there in Cuba, because a lot of Spanish Edomites were the prominent ones that owned those fields in Cuba, and they were having these people pick that resource for them, and they were making all kind of money off of that. That was free labor for these Edomites, And these Edomites have to pay for this. This type of history, they don't want to come out because it points them in the side of being guilty. So what? You got a lot of Zebulonites that just live in Cuba. And to this day, they may be calling themselves Cubans, but their history goes all the way back to Mayan slaves that came from, the Yucatan Peninsula, which were Zebulonites, and then went to Cuba. And Cuba, actually, the natives of Cuba is the tribe of Manasseh. But what you have, these Spanish conquistador devils that set up different jurisdictions, whether it have been Mexico, in Central America, Brazil, Venezuela. And what they were doing was trading the tribes from each land to each land, and they didn't get back to see their homeland again. And wherever they went, they were forced to they were subjugated. They were forced to work without pay. It's and then eventually throughout history they got put out of slavery, but still into this very same time they're living the after effects of that captivity. And what is that? That's the curses, man. And the slaves and being put on slave ships itself and facing that slavery in itself was curses from the Most High. Because why? Because these people are Israelites. So let's look at 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter. So this is 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 40. It says, "Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land." And the 10 tribes were carried away prisoner. It's talking about what happened in the ancient world. It says, "In the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so they came into another land. But they took counsel amongst themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them and had still the flood till they were passed over." So that what that represents is they left from that captivity. Some of them escaped and somehow managed to leave that captivity, get on ships and sail all the way to America. Because usually the Atlantic Ocean is very tumultuous when you try to cross it. You end up getting into a lot of shipwrecks. It's a very rough journey. But it says here that the Most High held still those waters so they could actually come and navigate all the way to the Americas. And he showed signs in the heavens to where it was possibly even chariots allowing them to navigate. It says, for through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Arsareth. Okay, and they dwelt there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come. So this prophesies that the 10 tribes would be in a particular land even to the end of days. And what that is talking about is America, the Americas, North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean islands. That's where the 10 tribes of Israel actually came to. Okay. So this is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 33. "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go." You see? So Israel and Judah, Israel represents the so-called, what they're called today is Hispanics and Native Americans, right? And when we say Hispanics, we're talking about the native Hispanics, the ones whose fathers goes back to native Indians who were indigenous to this land of America before the conquistadors came here. And the Native Americans, of North America, like Cherokee Indians and so forth. And then Judah represents the so-called Negroes, which are taken captivity from the western shores of Africa, right? Because both of these peoples, when you track throughout history, they actually go back to the land of Israel. Okay, and in these latter times, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, our God, is raising us up with this information because he's looking to set up his people back in their old estate, basically making them kings and priests on the earth once again. All right, so that's why this information is going out, so you Israelites out there can wake up. So all praises goes to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Kakodash. Lord's will, you brothers will edify. You could get some bits of information from this and grow spiritually. Shalom.